Now Sweeney, Dwayne Sweeney! Sweeney's over! Can you please hand it over to your captain, Dwayne Sweeney?
Welcome to Real Tales with Sweens. On this episode, I catch up with Adam Thomson. Adam is a professional rugby player that has travelled the globe applying his trade for nearly 20 years. He has played over 100 games of Super Rugby for teams both based here in New Zealand and Australia. He was also a member of the All Black squad which won the 2011 Rugby World Cup. We cover a range of topics such as being a plant-based athlete, Adam living in Bali and rebuilding his body after a spinal infection threatened to end his career, how playing sevens for New Zealand took his game to the next level. We also talk about Adam becoming a founder and director of the representation agency We Are Tenzing, and how he uses his learnings to help mentor the next generation of aspiring athletes. The show notes will be posted on Instagram at Real Tales with Sweens and the website realtaleswithsweens.com. Lastly, Adam is a person I have a lot of respect for and someone I really enjoyed connecting with. So I want to say thank you, Adam, for sharing your tale. Enjoy the podcast. All right, I'm just sitting here with Adam Thomson, so All Black number 1073. G'day, Adam.
G'day, mate. Good to be here.
Yeah. Good
to see you done your research too.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, it's good. I was actually researching this episode was actually quite cool and quite interesting for me. We do have, I guess, a background of playing against each other, and we got to play together once back in 2015. But yeah, there was a lot more to it once I started to peel the layers back. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Mate, there's a few layers there. It's been 20 odd years of rugby now, so there's a lot to delve into, eh?
Yeah. No, I'm excited. I'll start with, I guess, how I know you, and like I said, we played together a lot over our careers, and both, been involved in the professional game for a long time now. Both played against each other here in New Zealand and obviously in Japan as well, which is something we'll talk about too. But I have a very vivid memory of playing against you in 2010. So it was Waikato versus Otago at the Brook. It was actually the game we sort of spoke about it later that year. The game that we made Ben Smith an All Black. He was outstanding that day. Our kick chase looked horrendous, and he had an absolute blinder, and then made the end of year tour for the All Blacks. But
nice. I'm sure we'll thank you for that one day.
Yeah. Maybe I could get him on. But yeah, I remember you were playing 6 or 8 that day. I can't remember exactly, but I knew you were either 6 or 8, and I remember there was a part of the game that ended up coming up in our review, and Scott McLeod was our defensive coach at the time. And I remember you getting the ball, and I was playing wing at the time, and I've never been a fast winger, but I was playing wing, and you got the ball going down the right-hand touchline. I think Ben Smith might have made the break, and then he passed it to you, and you were gunning it for the corner, and I had to try and chase you, and I got burnt off by Lucy. And then and he was not happy. He tore shreds off me in the review for getting gassed by a loose forward. But in doing my research also, this actually made me feel real good about this, is that in 2009, you were the fastest All Black over 40 metres with guys like Mills Molina, Corey Jane, Joe Rokothoko in the squad. So that actually made me feel a whole lot better.
Yeah, I'm glad I can contribute to your review there, mate.
Yeah.
Glad you got a bit of stick for that.
Yeah. It's just a pity that's taken me 10 years to actually realise that how fast you were. I knew how fast you were because I was trying to chase you, but to know a stat like that, I think Stormy might have taken it easy on me.
Just send him a text, mate. Just give him the page and let him know.
Yeah. 10 years on, he's probably forgot it. Nah, cool. And we also got to play together back in 2015 for the Barbarians. I did want to talk about that because to me, you in that environment, you kind of epitomised, I guess, what it was like to be a Barbarian, and you're very free-spirited and kind of carefree sort of guy, and it's probably a big part of why you've had such a long career and such a, I guess, diverse career, and played in a lot of different environments. But can you just share for me what it was like to be a part of the Barbarians and how much you enjoyed that?
The Barbarians, for me, like, it's a pretty special team. Like, it's unique in world rugby. Like you mentioned earlier, there's so many guys that you play against. You play against these guys your whole career, international level, whatever. And there's a couple of pleasantries at the aftermatch function, but it's not until you actually come together in a team like the Barbars where you get to know them personally off the field, and you can play with guys that you've had a great rivalry against your whole career. So there's not many teams like that, especially at international level where you can come together and there's it's Barbar style rugby. There's no pressure. You know what the trainings are like. You just turn up casually and you throw the ball around, and you go in there as underdogs and you're expected to pull a few tricks and you have a few beers, and it's just just an awesome experience, and really lucky to be a part of that club.
Yeah. Because was that your second involvement in 2015? Did you play against the Wallabies?
Yeah, I've had maybe 5 or 6 games for the Barbars now. So
yeah, because I remember that Wallabies game because the Honey Badger played for the Barbarians and he scored an absolute ripper.
The Badger's on fire, eh?
Yeah,
he was a superstar that week too. Like 1,000 different interviews, but we almost pulled that one off too. It would have been one of the great Barbars victories, but we had Stephen Luatua throwing a 50-meter NFL pass and a little chip kick from a tap and that sort of thing. And I guess in the professional area, you don't see that kind of fun in rugby so much. So that's why those games are such a spectacle.
Yeah. I think it's important too, though. It actually shows that maybe we could have a little bit more fun because you see that there, like the Wallabies are, one of the strongest teams in world rugby. You guys went out there with the whole, obviously talented players, but with the whole mindset of fun, and you nearly pulled it off. Like you nearly beat them. So if you can get into that state where you just relax and let your skills go, sometimes you can. It's a pretty good recipe.
I mean, I guess you're talking about international level players, so there's a lot of talent there, but it goes to show that sometimes rugby can be a little bit over-scripted, and the fact that you're this part of the field, we do this, we hit it once, we kick to the corner. Like whereas Barbars, it's pure rugby, right? You play what you see, and then you offload and you back your skills, and 9 times out of 10 it comes off, doesn't it? So
it's very rarely you see it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I suppose that you are talking very high caliber players. Some of the names that you played with through the Barbarians.
A lot of those South African guys like Bucky's and Victor Matfield and Brian Habana and some Argentinian stars, and definitely a lot of those Wallabies guys as well. So like I said, as an international player playing against these guys every week and getting an opportunity to be in the same team, that's pretty special. So really unique in world rugby, and hopefully it continues.
There's some great characters that came out of the Melbourne Rebels that we'll talk, because I want to talk a little bit about your time in Australia. So we'll probably
leave it. Different, man. That's where all the characters come from.
I really enjoyed their company, so we'll dive into that a little bit later. What I did want to touch on, because like I mentioned there, you're very, like I said, you epitomised that Barbarian sort of free spirit. You've always come across to me as a player that's not too worried about, I guess, a big stage or a big game. You're just always consistent in who you are. And I did a podcast of Anton Leonard-Brown last week, and he spoke about that and how he's only really started to play to his full potential when he's got a consistency about himself. So he's very consistent in himself and what he does, and it came across really well. Is that something that you've always had, or is that something you had to work at?
It is something I've always had, but it's probably been to my detriment, I think. Like I look back on my younger years of footy, and a lot of coaches I probably rubbed up the wrong way because of just my personality. Like I'm a pretty relaxed kind of guy, and I think back then it was more, everyone kind of towed the line, and this is what a rugby player does, and this is how you prepare. And the older I've gotten, the longer I've played, the more I realise it's there's individuals within the game, and everyone, you don't have to be bashing your head against the wall. Some people prepare by being relaxed and having a laugh and joking, and other guys need that strict structure. So for me, it probably got me in a little bit of trouble early on until I was lucky enough to have a couple of coaches that recognised that I was probably a little bit different and prepared differently, and as long as I performed in the weekend, they kind of gave me that rope to do that. So and as I've gone on and I've kind of that's me, that's my style, and kind of take it or leave it. And I'm strong enough as a person now to be this is who I am, this is what I can do, and this is if I can contribute to the team and fit into your team environment, that's great. And if it's not going to work, then it's not going to work.
That's probably something that's super important in the professional game, is understanding yourself first before you get in. And it doesn't necessarily always happen that way, because now we see it as probably happening less and less because guys are making it younger and younger. They don't actually know who they are yet, so it's actually quite a hard transition period. Do you find that?
Yeah, I think about, if I look at myself when I was 19, 20, or a completely different person to who I am now. So it's quite a journey in finding yourself and finding what works for you. And there's a lot of years there where I tried to change things about myself to try and fit in a little bit more. And then it wasn't until I was a bit later and more confident that I could just step back and say, this is me. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of rugby players out there that are following that same path and having those sorts of struggles. But
yeah, I think it's good though. It seems there's definitely a shift in being able to talk through that rather than coaches bottling someone off because they are a certain way. It's like, okay, he's that certain way, why? And it's more open. I guess the communication's more open ended, and coaches are making a better effort. Team environments, players are making a better effort to understand the individual rather than just, oh yeah, he's that way, just let him be, doesn't fit.
Yeah, I think so. I think as it's become more professional, you bring in psychologists and you open up personality dynamics and that kind of thing. And whereas if you think back to when we were younger, it was probably school teacher, school kid. So like the coach got up there and it was a lecture, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone sat there and listened to what he wanted, and then you went out and then did it. Now it's kind of a bit more of an open forum where you've got players, leaders contributing, and it's more of a everyone buying in and contributing, and that success is built off everyone backing what they do because they're part of the creation process. Whereas before it was, how many times have you been told like go out there and do this? And you're like, oh, I don't really believe in what they're doing, but they told me to do it, so I'll do it. So I mean, the game's changing, and it's better for it.
Yeah, I'll tell a little story just on that. I remember played a guy, Bradley Barrett, who played second five for England. Actually, he was a South African. He was playing for the Sharks at the time, and I remember we were playing the Sharks over in Durban, and the coaches. And I remember I was maybe my second year of Super Rugby, so I wasn't that experienced and didn't really have much of a voice in the team. And I had this really vivid picture in my head of what this guy was doing to people. He was smashing people. He was such a good defender. And I remember we were going into play and I was actually on the bench and we said, oh, we're going to make this guy tackle because his tackle stats were low. Like he wasn't making many tackles. And I was like, I know exactly why he's not making any tackles, but I didn't have the voice, to say it. So I left it. And then my good mate, Callum Bruce, was playing second five in front of me, and then he went out and we sent him down his channel first play and he got carted off. And I was like, maybe I should have spoke up, but it was and then I ended up playing 78 minutes and I definitely didn't run down his channel. The game plan changed when I got on. I said, I'm not going down there. But I suppose that now there definitely is a little bit more room for guys that are younger to speak up, and I think it's more of an awareness too from the senior guys to actually include them in conversations, ask for their opinion, because you're still, when you go into an environment, it's still very hard to speak up when there's a lot of experience around.
I think part of that is the culture shift as well. I remember being a young fellow coming into a team, that whole back of the bus mentality, like you had your senior players there who, I remember some guys wouldn't talk to me for a couple of seasons until you proved yourself, and then it was an old school kind of school setup of do your time and your patience and it'll come. But I think understanding what creates a team culture and a winning culture, you've got to get everyone on board as soon as possible. I think that's what I really enjoyed about the All Blacks, with guys like Kevi Mialame recognising that and really onboarding guys quickly and saying, look, you're here for a reason, you've got talent, like have a voice, be a part of it. And from what I've heard from guys that are in there at the moment, they've only continued that. They've got hearing that Sonny Bill Williams had an open door policy where the young guys could go in and sit down and talk about whatever they wanted, whether it was footy or pressures at home or whatever. It was all about upskilling that environment and creating a culture. And I think that's another area where rugby's come a long way.
Yeah, definitely. I went through very similar. We went through the same era, starting out, and it was very similar up here as well. It was you definitely had to, I guess, earn the right to speak. And yeah, I did struggle with that. I found I had a lot of anxiety when I was younger, because I never felt like I was good enough, and that was, I probably by nature have been like that my whole life. I was a real perfectionist when I was younger, and everything kind of had to be perfect. And if I made a mistake, I would just,
it's the end of the world. Eh?
Yeah, it was the end of the world, man. And I couldn't let things go.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until Warren Gatland was huge for me when he came back and coached Waikato, and he taught me to train with no fear. So it was really I actually made way more errors at training than, it's from that day on pretty much, once he convinced me that was the way forward, than what I ever did before that, because I was actually pushing myself, and it really helped me develop my game and deal with pressure.
Yeah, he said a really interesting thing this year with the Chiefs, actually, which stuck with me. He said, I'll never criticise you for having a go and making a mistake, but I'll always criticise you for not trying. So for him, the mistake was not attempting to pass or not trying something, rather than having the go and it not coming off. So for me, that's probably, I've heard a lot of coaches speak, but that one really stuck with me.
Yeah, well, that's the exact thing that he said to me when I was 21 years old. So
he's recycling the same stuff.
Yeah. Well, but it changed me completely. I wouldn't be half the player that I am, and I probably wouldn't even had a very long career if it wasn't for that shift in mindset and just giving me the freedom to fail. Like I guess we all kind of grew up with, strict coaches, and you don't make mistakes, you don't give the ball to someone in a worse position, or the same old adages. So for someone to do that and to actually really push it, he didn't just say it once. It was like, if I wasn't doing it, he'd be like, Sweens, come on, we talked about this. And then, okay. Yeah, so it was,
it's quite powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, very powerful. It's
quite freeing.
Yeah, and that's part of that. You talk about a team culture too, and getting people, in the same, lined up the same way and going in the same direction, and getting people comfortable in an environment. That's what it was, because all of a sudden when we're making mistakes at training, it's not like, and then the words come out after that. But, it was just like, okay, we're trying something here, we're trying to push it. If it's a constant, okay, let's go. You got to go and work on that. But it wasn't just jump down everyone's throat as soon as an error was made. Yeah.
I mean, that's what training's for. Pull the trigger.
Yeah. I love that statement, pull the trigger.
Have a crack.
Yeah. That's Barbar's rugby. That's why I enjoyed that so much. I do want, talking about, I guess, the life balance and mental well-being. You obviously, it's heavily documented what happened to you at the end of 2017 while you're in Japan. With your spinal infection. Can you just talk us through, sort of briefly, what that was, how it sort of came about, and then I guess we'll dive into the journey of where you are now and coming back from that.
Long version, short version?
Oh, whatever. It's your podcast, mate.
How much take we got? So I was playing for NEC over in the Japanese top league end of 2017. There's probably only a handful of games left in the season. So it was that time of the year where you get a few knocks and you can take a little bit extra time to recover. But I pulled up pretty sore after the game with a back, really tight lower back. Just thought it was quite a regular thing. I'd suffered from it before and managed it, but went to training early that week and still wasn't right. Got sent home. So just jumped into bed that night, had a couple of painkillers, and about midnight I was just getting some really heavy spasms in my back, and I was kind of on the floor rolling around trying to find a position to relieve it, but kind of figured out pretty quickly that something was pretty seriously wrong. So being in Japan, it's quite rural in Japan where NEC was. There was no real kind of English-speaking doctors or anything, so I got a couple of teammates to come around, and they ended up carrying me downstairs and putting me in a car, and I think we went to about 2 hospitals where they rejected me. I think I was a foreigner, too hard basket. I don't know, maybe Belgian insurance or something like that, but ended up finding a 3rd hospital that accepted me, and then language barrier. They obviously had a teammate speaking Japanese for me, but they wouldn't. You go here. The sort of pain it was morphine level, like give you a jab and put you in comfort, and then try and figure it out. But they tried to force me into an X-ray machine, and I was screaming, screaming murder. And lucky I had Dave Dillon there, actually, who you're familiar with, who was he went to bat for me pretty hard and kind of forced the issue, and eventually got a bit of painkillers and got through the night. Transferred to the team doctor hospital the next day. Didn't really know what it was. Thought it was a bulge disc or something like that. Went through MRIs and CAT scans and all sorts. Kept coming back. But they didn't know what it was. There was nothing wrong. So that was really scary for a guy who's had a pretty cruisy run through rugby, kind of only really normal injuries to keep getting told after scan that they didn't know what was wrong, and just being in a huge amount of pain. Like, just remember just being excruciating, just spasming and just having no relief. It's pretty disheartening. Luckily, I had a specialist there who said that it might be this thing called lumbar discitis. Just got really lucky with the specialist. He said it's quite a rare thing, doesn't happen very often to young people, but he's dealt with a couple of older patients that had it before. So he said, this is my gut feeling of what this is. It won't show up on a scan for a week, but if I'm right, that's what you've got. So had a pretty rough week. No sort of major painkillers. I think the Japanese system over there, they're really anti.
Yeah, they are.
Heavy painkillers. So really, really dark times of not sleeping and kind of just trying to mentally battle through that. Eventually had the scan at the end of the week. It came back. They had lumbar discitis, which is it's an infection in the disc in your lower back. So between L4 and L5, a vertebrae that's not there anymore for me. it was there for a while. Yeah. But this infection, it was just a regular like a staph infection, or they figured that wasn't anything crazy, but it was just a regular bacterial infection that had made its way into that disc, and then because there's hardly any blood flow or anything through there, it kind of just made itself at home and ravaged its way through there, kind of tore away at the disc, eventually eating the disc away, and then all the bones and the vertebrae. You can see all the vertebrae kind of gone. Eventually that fused together by itself at the end. But there's a lot of struggles. Like I got put on antibiotics, which had started working initially, and then I crashed after a couple of days because they'd given me Japanese doses. So nothing on there.
Yeah.
That they went to know I was the only foreigner that they'd ever dealt with. So you get a big 110 kilo rugby player in there. Japanese dose painkillers, Japanese dose antibiotics, and there's a few challenges for them. But eventually we got some antibiotics that started working. I was the fluid from the infection was pushing against my spinal cord, so I was losing feeling in my legs. So that was pretty scary. The surgeon told me that they might have to cut me open, drain it out, which was going to cause other complications, obviously. Talking to Scott Berger at the time, he had something very similar, operation on his lower back, and I don't know if you know that story, but he ended up with a meningitis secondary infection, and he almost died. His family had to actually go in there and say goodbye to him. Yeah. And end of the story, he managed to come back and play for the Springboks again and be a comeback player of the year. But obviously talking to him in the state that I was in was pretty scary. Yeah. So luckily the day before the surgery, the antibiotics started working, and so I was on a drip of antibiotics for about 6 weeks, I think.
A lot of pain during that time as well?
Huge amounts of pain. It was probably at least a month of really, really heavy pain. Like I said, but the Japanese painkillers wasn't really taking the edge off that much, unfortunately. So, but I learned a lot about myself in terms of, your mentality. It's not something you think you can get through until you you get a challenge like that, and you come to the other side. I think I was in bed for probably the first 6 weeks, not being able to move, not being able to go to the toilet, and then eventually, I was cleared to start rehab, and I had this massive corset made for me, like in the movies where they pull the strings tight.
Yeah.
So I was locked in, and then kind of walking on a frame and going into the rehab center, just like you see on the movies with the two poles, and they're staggering down the poles, and I'm like, going for 2 or 3 meters down there, and then getting on a treadmill and going for a few 100 meters and lifting weights that were like 5 kilos. So basically, had to rebuild my body from the ground up. I was under 90 kilos, I think, at my lowest. So yeah, I was pretty much a skeleton, walking skeleton, and didn't look too flash, but the doctor said, pretty much written rugby off and said, look, it's more about quality of life now. It's not really. I don't think rugby is an option, and you have to face this reality that you'll never play again. So, I made that decision pretty early in my mind that I was going to get back to the rugby field. I don't know how realistic that was, but I just said, look, you're at the end of your career. This is not going to be your last memory of rugby.
Yep.
Like, get back on the field. I don't care what level it is, even if it's just a local club game. Like, get back out there, finish on your feet, and sign off on your own terms. So that was the big drive for me. It was a year and a half of rehab, of putting weight back on, getting strong enough, trusting that the back was good enough, and then the opportunity finally came at 2019, playing for Takapuna on the shore and running back out there, which is a special moment. So, and then everything from there to playing minor to be playing super now is it's been a bonus. Whirlwind, crazy. Never thought it would have happened, but I'm actually in a weird way really really grateful for that setback. It's actually taught me a lot about myself, about overcoming adversity, and it's easily the biggest challenge I've had in my life. So, in a weird way, really grateful for it.
Yeah. Well, I suppose your mindset around that, you said pretty early on, you made that decision that you wanted to finish on your feet, you wanted to get back and play again. That would have been so important for you to be able to work through a whole lot of adversity to get back to that point, because you had an end goal in your mind that you wanted to achieve.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, there's not a lot of conscious thought when you go through big issues like that at the time. It's not till I got through it and I started unpacking it. I talked to people about it, like I'm speaking to you, and people are like, "Oh, that's amazing! How did you do that? How'd you do that?" And I was like, "It's not really anything different to how I've lived most of my life. Like, as a rugby player, this is your training. This is your goals in the gym, or your speed, or whatever. It's just these little tiny goals that you got to tick off." So, without really thinking about it, I approached everything that way. In terms of the rehab, it was like, okay, I've got 5 kilo dumbbells. I'll push 5 kilo dumbbells. I've got to walk 200 meters. I'll walk 200 meters. I fell over a couple of times. I didn't make it every time, and there was a lot of backward steps and sideways steps. But eventually, I just keep going forward. You'll get there. You'll get there. Just keep little milestone. Celebrated every milestone. I think that was a big key as well. I've had crazy moments of like this, the smallest little goal. And it was like fist pumping and dancing, and but it's quite a journey. But it was it was just a step by step process. And the mentality was like, it's okay to fail. Like you'll fall over some points. You'll have bad days. You won't want to get out of bed. Things will be tough, but the end goal's there. If it means that much to you, you'll get there. So.
Yeah, I suppose being a professional athlete and for you, you've played at the highest level. You've been an All Black. That to get to that level, there's a serious amount of that ingrained in you. Just being able to focus on what's important in that moment, and you see it from the best players when they play during the game. It's that they're just task by task, and before you know it, that's something that when I first went in it, I was always thinking ahead, like trying to think. I want to make a big play or whatever it is, but it wasn't until I actually got all that crap out of my head and focused, okay, what do I need to do right now? And then you do that, and it's okay, what do I need to do right now? And you break, before you know it, 80 minutes is gone, and you might have had a big influence on the game. You might not. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But just being able to focus on what's important and just what's right in front of you is like such a good tool to have.
Yeah, that's a learning skill. I was exactly the same as you. I got caught in the weeds so much. Like I was so worried about my performance, or sorry, worried about being selected for this team or that rep level or whatever. And then it wasn't until a coach at the time, I think it was Steve Hansen actually, when he was back in Canterbury, said to me, he said, "Can you select yourself in this team? Can you put yourself in this team?" No, I can't. I'm not selecting the team. I can't put myself. He's like, so why? What are you worrying about it? Like, it's how you control. Control the controllables. All you can do, train hard, play hard, do your simple basics well, and it's one or two people's opinions, and you got no control about that. So don't put any energy into it, and that stuck with me for a very long time. It's when things get a bit messy or clouded or get into dark spaces, it's, can I control that? Should I devote any energy to it? No, I can't. So I just control what I can control.
Yeah. It's I see that a lot with I guess friends and family that haven't played, I guess, elite sport or much sport. That is a skill that they don't have because they haven't had to go through, I guess, the pressures and the criticism that you go through as a professional rugby player. Like, you have to learn to be able to block out things that you can't control. Otherwise, it just eats you alive.
Yeah, it's a learned skill. Like, it's like you said, with your friends and family, it's not something that probably everyday people have.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not a constant for them, is it?
Yeah. Well, now, like, you've got Instagram and social media, the newspaper. Anyone can pick up a pen and paper or a keyboard and write whatever they want. So, and that used to really affect me as a young player. People tell you how terrible you were and you shouldn't have done it, shouldn't be in this team, and such critics, and that used to really affect me. I mean, because you read it all, but at some point I made a decision to block that out and be like, look, I don't really care what these people think of me. It's I'm the biggest critic of myself. Family, friends that I trust, and that's another big turning point where I think a lot of rugby players will have to get to in their career as well.
Part of that, I guess, your rehab journey was that you lived in Bali for a while.
Yeah, man.
So living in Bali, and there was an awesome video of what you found in your drawer in one of the places you'd stay. But living in Bali, and I suppose living as a professional rugby player, and it's clear now that you were of the mindset that you wanted to get back and play rugby.
Yeah.
How did you find it, like living in Bali and facility-wise and having what you sort of needed? Did you have everything that you needed?
Yeah, but the decision to go there was my partner Jesse, who has been amazing, supported me through that whole journey of not only the illness, but in me going to Japan and going to Australia and all these crazy dreams that she's followed me on this rugby journey. And for her, a big dream of hers was to go to Bali. So when the opportunity came, I was on the rehab mission. She really wanted to go, so it was really about my turn to support her. So all I really needed was a gym and some decent nutrition, and I could survive. So Bali was perfect. It was as expats going over there, we fell into a community of people from around the world with a similar mindset, and found a great little local gym and good food places, and just lived a really simple life. Got up in the morning, trained, ate really good fresh food, and massages and beaches and that kind of life. So it was perfect.
Being there too, you're very disconnected from being Adam Thomson, the All Black too, as well, which would have helped, no doubt, when you're trying to sort of train in there.
Yeah, I guess that's it's quite being a New Zealander, playing rugby in New Zealand. You do have a spotlight on you all the time. So to go to somewhere like Bali, like I talked about, the mindset over there, like really like-minded people have. Everyone's got a story. There's a reason why people end up in Bali. There's something in their life, something's happened, or sick of the corporate life and they want to try something different. And so it's more about the connections you make there are with the person, and you never get the questions like you do here of, so what do you do? And like what's your job? Like you never get asked that, or your possessions or your net worth and all that. It's kind of
irrelevant.
It's irrelevant over there. Yeah, it's really it's about people connecting, and because you're expats with all these different experiences, you find fast friends, and because everyone's on a similar wavelength. Yeah, it's a good little community.
Yeah, nice. So have you obviously stayed in touch with the good friends that you made while you were there?
Yeah,
have you been back in that since?
No, we'd planned on going back. Obviously,
You can't now.
with the lockdowns changed things, but we've still got some gear over there in storage, and we plan on the ultimate lifestyle for us would be to split our time between New Zealand and Bali. So we've still got some really good friends there. They're lifelong friends now. Just because the people they are and the experiences you had.
Yeah, cool. And you talked there about nutrition, and you're a plant-based athlete. Was that were you plant-based before the spinal infection, or was that something that's come through your rehab and your journey?
No, I was. I think I was probably about 6 months into it, just before I left for that Japanese contract with the NEC.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that was that's a big part of my recovery as well, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it's difficult as an athlete. Like there's always people question, how can you be a high performance athlete without eating meat? But for me, it was just a choice around animal welfare and kind of ethical reasons, and then obviously the research about it being good for your health. It kind of ticked a few boxes, and I had a bit of time on my hands to try it out, and it just felt good. So I've continued it. I'm about 4 years in now, and kind of haven't looked back.
Yeah, wicked. Do you have like a favourite meal? Or like a go-to?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a go-to. I guess the good thing about taking meat out of your diet, like I grew up on a farm, like I was three meals a day with meat. So and I've had my fair share of meat over my life. So that, I guess the point when you take meat out of the diet and that's your staple, it's like, what do you fill it with? So that was quite a journey for me. Was like discovering new foods and like how to add the flavor and keep it interesting. Because I guess when people think of plant based, they're like, salad. How you gonna survive on salad the whole time? So it's about
that's our narrow-mindedness,
chickpeas and lentils and all this kind of thing. And my partner Jessie's actually half Malaysian, so all of her cooking is so full of flavor anyway that you can take the meat out and replace it, and because it's just still so delicious, you wouldn't even notice. And I think that's the big obstacle is finding the food and keeping the flavor.
Yep.
Because a lot of times we'll have friends around and we'll serve them meals and they wouldn't know the difference.
No.
Yeah, it still tastes good, so they're happy.
No, cool. You also spoke there about Bali, and it's not about status or title.
Yeah.
But you grew up going to high school in Christchurch, where it's all about what school you went to, which I unpacked off in Anton's episode. And so you were at Christchurch Boys High. And
how carried away did Anton get?
He wasn't too bad, actually. He just sort of shared a little bit about his experiences there. But it's obviously a huge rivalry, and it dates back, I think 1892 was the first game, and there'd been 134 games, I think, when I did the research for Anton's episode. So what were your experiences of playing in that, and some of the players that you played with through your Christchurch Boys years?
Like I said, I grew up on a farm in Ashburton. Went to the local primary school there, and then my parents wanted me to have a balanced childhood, I guess, being from the farm, having a bit of city life. So I ended up actually being a boarder at a preparatory school called Bedbury, which I went there. I think I was about 10 at the time, maybe. So a couple of years there.
That's a young age to go.
It is, yeah. It's really difficult, but again, you learn a lot about yourself when you're being kind of semi-independent at that age, and top education as well. Really, like compared to the offerings in Ashburton, I think that was a major draw. I think went on to Christchurch Boys High, which kind of bucked the trend because a lot of those Medbury kids all went on to Christ College.
Oh, yeah.
So there's only a couple of us actually ended up going to Boys High, but again into the hostel there, so a border away from the farm. and then growing up in a city like Christchurch. So it's really different when you leave your friends from the farm and from the rural community behind, and you go to Christchurch, and then as the time goes on, you come back and you kind of things change a little bit. You're like you're excited
like a stranger sometimes.
Well, you're excited to get home, and you're like, oh, what's happening, guys? What's going on? And then they're like, it's the same thing. Yeah, same stories. And you're like, you still love them for who they are, but it's like your world gets opened up a lot. Obviously, going to cities and traveling and that sort of thing. But I love my time at Boys High. Difficult being away from your parents, obviously, and I think being in a hostel at that age is similar to what we talked about earlier. It's that you earn your stripes.
Yeah.
as a third former coming through, and you just really got picked on a lot, and you follow the rules and make people's beds and do all that, and you kind of go through it, and you get to sim form, and then you leave and you start at the bottom of the ladder again. But I had a great time there. My rugby kind of really flourished for me. I was okay in Ashburton playing for the Mid Canterbury rep teams, which there's not a huge talent pool there, but I think Christchurch Boys High is where I really kind of started getting opportunities. I think I played for Canterbury under 18, ended up making New Zealand schools team. I played lock for Christchurch Boys, and then the coach of the New Zealand team, he was the one that shifted me to blindside actually. So I ended up making the New Zealand schools team as a blindside, and then never got back in the entry room since. Mate. Only this year.
Yeah, only this year.
So I've avoided it for like 20 odd years, but it finally caught up on me.
Yeah. No, that was very similar for me. So I grew up in Morrinsville, a small town, and then going across to Hamilton Boys High was massive for me. So I went from, I suppose, being one of the better players in a small town to then come across and be in a school of 1,500 boys and being right down the bottom of the pecking order. So it really taught me that, I didn't get things my own way. I had to work really hard to get noticed and to make the team. So it was and that that paid dividends for me, no doubt, further down my career as well. You learnt to work hard for what you wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. As much there's so many positive things out of being in a small town and a rural community, but if you've got aspirations and something like rugby, you've really got to get out of the small pond and get chucked in the deep end a little bit, isn't it?
No,
especially learning. If you're a talented player and you're the best in your little region, life's not like that. Rugby's not like that.
Nah.
You're not going to get anywhere by being the best all the time. The great players have been knocked back and missed selection and been. I think it's the competition that draws the best out in you. So if you've been challenged and you're surrounding yourself with great players, you rise to the occasion.
I wasn't the best player in Morrinsville at that age, but the better players that stayed in Morrinsville, they never went anywhere because they were just used to being the best, and then they I guess never got pushed, and then things became easy, and then all of a sudden their interest was gone, and then they dropped out of rugby at like 16, and they had a lot more talent than I did, but I guess not driven. And maybe if they came to Boys High with me and had to work really hard for it, they might have found that working hard for it and then getting results from it, that they would have stayed in the game. But
it's a very similar story to my friends back home. Really.
I did want to talk about, so you made your Super Rugby debut for the Highlanders in 2006, and then were left out in 2007, which I remember. 2007 was my first year of Super Rugby, and I remember you not making the Highlanders team, and because I knew who you were, I thought you were a good player, and I just remember it being like, oh, why did Adam Thomson miss out on that? And then you went and played sevens for New Zealand. So do you want to just share a little bit about that year for you and what that was like? Because you're outstanding for the sevens team.
Yeah, I think my early days, like late teenage years, early 20s, was really frustrating for me as a rugby player because, like I said, I'd made age grade teams in 19s and it was Colt at the time with 21s, playing with guys that would go on to be some of the best in the world, superstars, and that I just want everything to happen so fast. You know,
Yeah,
it's like,
you
okay,
don't
I'm ready.
wait.
I want to make my NPC debut. I'm ready to be a super player. And like, you know, it's just and you're just not patient. And then watching all my teammates from that New Zealand team play Super Rugby and, you know, go really well and then getting all the accolades. And I'm kind of like, oh man, like, okay,
Yeah.
where's my opportunity? Like,
Yeah.
I need to be playing. And yeah, I just remember just being a really frustrated player. And I was sitting behind some really good rugby players at the time, you know, Josh Blackie and Craig Newby and some real star players there at the
Yeah,
time.
the 2 All Blacks there.
Yeah, so I remember getting the phone call from Greg Cooper telling me I wasn't going to make the team. Obviously, I was super upset. I'd made my debut 2006, the year before, but then the opportunity came to play for New Zealand Sevens. So, and in hindsight, it was the greatest thing that's probably happened to my rugby career because went into the camp under the legendary Gordon Titchings.
Yeah.
Got my ass handed to me
Yeah, I played the year
for
before.
months and months, and yeah, it took my fitness to a level where I never thought it could go. Like there were so many times at training I thought I'd been broken. You know, he's like, one more 150, one more 150. Like, when's it gonna end?
Yeah, I don't have one more.
Yeah, but yeah, he took my fitness to a new level, which is the main one of the big things.
Were you naturally fit? Because you always came
think
across like as a naturally. Well, I assumed.
Yeah, I think
naturally
I've been
fit player.
kind of above average naturally,
Yeah.
but sevens, like you know,
Yeah.
I think I'm fit, but it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
the sevens fit is like a
Yeah.
whole new level. So and that pushed me to like again it broadened my mentality of how far I could push myself. And the other major thing was just skill level, right? Like so you're constantly in the game, catching, passing, having to make decisions. And for me, that all those skills I learned like just broadened my 15s game exponentially. I think, yeah, like I said, it's the best thing that's happened to my career. Everything you do on a sevens field matters. You know, it's not like in 15s where you can kind of
Ghost.
you hide by the ruck, or if you miss a tackle, 9 times out of 10, someone else will pick them up.
Yeah.
Like everything matters on a sevens field. Like you miss a tackle, it's probably going to be a try at the other end.
Yeah.
You know, if you drop a ball, like everything comes down to these moments. And that's the big thing I took from sevens was moments, like making moments count, like executing under pressure, being in space. I think you really see the difference between guys that have played sevens and who haven't. You know, guys who make a break and are still calm under. You know, they assess their options and they make the right decision most of the time.
Yeah.
Whereas you've seen guys, a forward makes a break and freaks out and throws the ball away or something. So yeah, I had a year on the circuit. We ended up winning the series in the last tournament, which was amazing. And being able to play under Gordon Titchings was pretty special too.
Yeah, because I played the year before in 2006. So the guys that you were with in 2007, we all debuted that year before. It was a sort of a big changeover, and it was the only year that, well, at the time, it was the only team that hadn't won the circuit as it existed. I think it had been going for maybe 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, he was pretty successful.
Yeah, and they'd won every one. And then my team, we were the team that didn't win. And not even that, we didn't even win a tournament, which, was frustrating. But then I seen what happened to those guys. So we talked about it, going through adversity. So I was lucky enough to get picked up by the Chiefs the following year. So I didn't play sevens. My 15s career carried on, but a lot of those guys stayed. Myself and Corey Jane and Orlando Sokai were 3 guys that moved into Super Rugby, but the guys that stayed were guys like DJ Forbes, Lotte Rakambola, Tomasi Kama, like there's
the real sevens specialists.
And they stayed in. They had that adversity of the year before. They end up winning a title. They go on to win like multiple world titles, and it was it was real cool for me because I've always been a massive fan of sevens. So I loved playing it. Yeah, it was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. I wish that we were successful, but at the end of the day, I got to play. I was stoked with that. I had to play against and with some of the best players of all time. Sarevi was still playing, Fiji and William Ryder, and it was pretty special time in my career, and that fitness side of it. Like I've never been a naturally fit person. I was just naturally like chubby kid. So I thought I was pretty fit. I'd worked pretty hard, but then once I got into that environment, yeah, it just took me to a whole nother level. So,
Yeah.
and then no doubt that set me up to go into Super Rugby, the next year.
How did you find, like I talked about, how did you find your skill level and decision making and execute under pressure? Did you think your sevens contributed to your 15s career like that?
Yeah, definitely, especially from as a younger player, and even sort of that sevens year. I was always a player that made like a lot of line breaks, but never finished or executed. Never made a good decision.
Yeah.
Afterwards, like I'd either go too far myself or give it too early, or it was just I wasn't very. I suppose there wasn't a lot of benefit for the team unless I scored. We didn't score.
Yeah.
So I guess playing that sevens, it taught me different ways to be able, because I wasn't the fastest on the field.
Yeah.
Wasn't the fittest, so I had to find ways to connect, and then
makes you comfortable in that open space, eh?
Yeah. No, which is good. I really enjoyed my time playing sevens, especially because from a kid I'd grown up watching Cullen and all that play, and I just wanted to do it so bad. And
those guys are fun, man. Like the guys you mentioned, they know how to have a good time, eh? Like half the time they're playing pranks on each other off the field and playing pranks on Twitch, which was like, but they got away with it. It was just so much fun, and every tournament was like a party, right? Like everyone's dancing and singing and cheering, and I'm really really glad that I got the opportunity to have a year on that. That was one of my fondest memories.
Yeah, for me, I thought it taught me really well, and I ended up playing at the Brisbane Tens in 2017 with the Chiefs in the first year of the Tens, and we won it. And there was a lot of guys in that team, myself, Liam Messon, Timmy Nana Williams, that had played sevens before, and I reckon that played a huge part in us being successful, because we knew how to play multiple games in a day. We knew how to get up and then cool down, switch right off, switch back on, it's a very hard skill. Like it.
Well, it's not a 15 skill.
No, not at all.
Usually you play, you got a week of recovery and training, and you play again. Whereas it could be 3 games a day.
Yeah.
And used to be 10 minutes each
day.
It's like, how am I going to do this? And you're warming up and you're like, everything's aching and you're like trying to run and you're like, how can I get through this? You find a way.
Yeah, no, it was cool. Then from that, you talked there about you sort of took your fitness to a whole nother level. The following year, you end up making make your way back into the Highlanders and then your All Black debut. How was that for a quick turnaround?
Yeah. Well, that's rugby, man. It's like it's such a crazy sport. That's why now, as an older player, and I'm talking to young guys, and I see the same frustrations. And then I didn't make this, or the coach doesn't like me. My guest leader was like, just thinking back on my career, like things can just happen so fast. Like all you need is an opportunity. So Tommy Ellison stay wall ready. It's like, wall ready, Tom, are you wall ready?
Yeah.
So I love that expression. Like, he's always like, just you get your opportunity, just make sure you're ready for it. And if you take it, things can just can just spiral from there. Like you can. My debut 2008, I wasn't even starting for Highlanders. I was coming off the bench, and then a couple of good performances off the bench. Got a couple of starts towards the end of the season, then made the All Blacks, and kind of went from there. So things can just happen really quickly, and it's a funny old game.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, it's all about that.
Then you can get dropped and go out into the wilderness for a year, for a season or two. And it's like, it's a roller coaster, mate.
Yeah, well, just like how you said, Steve Hansen said earlier on, is that when you're worrying about at the end of the day, it's one man's opinion, or with the All Blacks, it's a few, but it's still it's a pretty small group of guys that make that final call to put people in. So when you focus on controlling what you can, and then they see something that they like, and if you're war ready, then you get in there and
that's it,
and make the most of the opportunity.
And things change, man. Like I've seen, as a loose forward, I've gone through so many iterations of like what coaches want. There was one year where it was the little short, stocky Heinrich Brousseau style flanker who was over the ball, big jackler, and then it shifted to a big tall line out option, and then it's a big powerful ball runner, and it's there's so many. Like a coach will have a specific thing that you might not be, but things tend to to go
Yeah.
in circles, eh? So
Yeah.
your time will come.
Yeah, make sure you're ready.
Make sure you're ready. Yeah, stay well ready.
Stay well ready.
Yeah.
Go forward to the Rugby World Cup in 2011 and being involved in that team. What was your experiences in terms of, because what I saw and I watched a documentary on it as well. I can't remember the name of it, but there was a documentary that ran afterwards, and I just saw such a well balanced team. Like when you look at, you could see it in terms of the way the team was playing and dealing with the pressures of it all. But then once you saw that documentary and it peeled the layers back a bit, and you get guys like Wayne Smith speaking about the environment. Conrad Smith was another one that spoke on there, and Richie and all the focus points in that. It just looked like that team was just so in tune, and then but also very level with the amount of emotion that was, I guess, surrounded around the tournament. Do you have your sort of memories from that tournament, or was it all just a blur?
Yeah, I think people don't quite understand that there's such a process to get into a World Cup. Like I remember I made my debut in 2008. So that was after the disaster of 2007, right?
Yeah.
So I go into the first All Blacks camp I'm ever involved in, and they're pretty much dissecting that World Cup and what went wrong. So that was the process. It was the year after that World Cup, and they wanted to take all the learnings out of it. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? What are we going to change? And then from that year 2008 to the 2011 World Cup, I was with the All Blacks the whole way, seeing them develop over those years. Obviously with the end goal being the World Cup. So being a part of that whole cycle, and then seeing, there's a lot learnt in that whole period. We had some pretty rough years there. We lost the Tri Nations, and we lost some big games where the public kind of slammed us for it, but that probably all contributed to the reason we won the 2011 World Cup. It was a team that we'd been put under pressure. I think the Springboks were really strong at the time. The Wallabies were still strong. We were losing to both of those teams. And I think that's what makes a great team. So when we got to the World Cup, we didn't have a cruisy run. We'd won everything, and no one put us under pressure. We were a team that had been tested, and obviously we had some really world class players, some of the greats, with Dan and Richie, Conrad, guys that were probably coming to their peak or at their peak. Really strong leadership group. Kevi Mialamu and Mills, and guys had been there for a long time and had been through the adversity, and were guys that if they spoke or they led with actions, you followed. So and then with young talent with Corey Jane and Israel Dag and guys coming through there that just had X factor. I think if you look at the balance of the team, it was we got the formula right. I think even though we lost. How many first fives did we lose?
What we down number 4.
Yeah,
I think it was
Pity. We had the great saviour Pity. We were at 10 for a while. Then obviously Beaver's stuff's pretty well known.
Yeah,
coming in there with the size medium shirt and kicking a goal in the final. But I think the whole cycle is a process. I think probably don't understand that, not being looking at that from the outside. You don't realise how much has actually gone into getting your game, or not just your game. It's you obviously tactics and strategy, but team culture, leadership, decision making under pressure, all that kind of stuff. That's forged over years of challenges.
And when I talk about a balanced team, there's the proof in that is the fact that we were down to a 4th string first 5 at the time in the World Cup final, and he plays pretty much the whole game. And he, and it's Beaver, and he's, so that shows, like, I don't care. In no other team could have won that final from any other country with their 4th string first 5. Like it just it wouldn't have happened.
That's just the strength of New Zealand rugby, isn't it? Like you can go through that many injuries and still pull a guy in who has got a lot of All Black experience, who's played in high pressure test matches and was ready to play a World Cup final. Like you said, there's probably not a lot of countries that can draw on that sort of depth.
He was war ready.
He was war ready, mate. White baiting a few beers on the river. He was ready.
We'll stay on the rugby and talk about we mentioned at the start about some of the interesting characters we got to play with in the Barbarians. There's a large contingent that came from the Melbourne Rebels at the time, with guys like Tom English and Luke Jones and Dom Shipley. And your time playing professionally in Australia, like how was it? You spoke about how the characters are there.
Yeah, a bit of background of why I went to Australia was, when I left New Zealand, I was really happy with what I'd done here. It was kind of like closing a chapter. And the great thing about footy is the opportunity to travel. I think it's that with being a global game, there's so much opportunity to see different countries and meet different people. And for me, that was an opportunity I wasn't really prepared to let go. Once I decided that New Zealand was done, for me, I was going to use the vehicle of rugby to experience life, basically. So that's why Japan stood out. Just being in a completely different environment, the culture, being completely out of my comfort zone, living in a city like Tokyo. You understand the shock of going to Japan and trying to live there. So I did that for a little bit, loved it. The amount of preseason training I did there, I actually was feeling fitter and stronger than I'd ever been. And obviously that 6-month Japanese preseason, I wasn't that keen to do tours. So,
like, how can I get out of this?
Yeah. So how can I get out of this? But the Australian team, I think it was the Reds at the time, reached out and gave me an opportunity. And I would never have come back to New Zealand to play. I wasn't at that stage yet. But the draw of Australia, like going to a new city, going to this new team culture and meeting new people that I'd only ever really played against. That was the massive draw of it. So to go to Brisbane and to live there and to play for the Reds, who are a team I've always admired, and to meet characters like Quade Cooper and Genia and James O'Connor and the Rebels, Tommy English and those Shipley and those guys. It was awesome. I had so much fun. It was the rugby's definitely a couple of steps behind New Zealand. I didn't go there to join the greatest rugby team in the world. I went there for the experience, and I definitely got that. It was so much fun. The Aussies are just so different. They're human, mate. They just turn up and rip into each other all day, and they have a laugh doing it. And it's, obviously living in places like Brisbane and Melbourne and experiencing the city and getting up the coast to Byron Bay and Noosa and that Sunshine Coast. Pretty awesome experiences.
Yeah, because they definitely know how to have a good time, eh?
Man.
Yeah. And their sense of humour is so different, eh? Like they
dry.
Yeah, so dry, and they just literally constantly rip the piss out of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I played with
how they show affection, eh?
Yeah.
Like, if they weren't ripping into you, like
you should be worried.
You should be worried. But the more they put on you, funny old thing.
Yeah, cool. We'll go off rugby. So we are Tenzing. Do you want to talk to us about that and your role with the company and what it is and what it does?
Yeah, We Are Tenzing is it's an agency that myself and a couple of business partners started a few years ago now. I think as a young rugby player and getting represented by an agent, everything's new to you, and you kind of whatever they tell you, you tend to believe because you're young and you haven't experienced life, and you just take it as gospel. But as my career advanced and I kind of had a few more life experiences, I kind of started to question, what was happening in that scene in terms of representation agencies and what they do for you in terms of contracts and finding the branding or work outside of rugby, and what their support system was like for guys leaving their sport. Like, I think at the time that we were discussing creating We Are Tenzing, I think Jonah just passed away, and the news broke of him passing with no money, and another guy, I forget his name, but the lock that played for the Waratahs, who ended up taking his own life.
I can see the face.
Yeah. But he was, I think he was Oxford educated or Cambridge educated. Great job, like everything to the outside looking in, like his life looked great, but he ended up taking his own life. So we started asking questions about athlete welfare, and these people who the country idolises, they put so much into the sport, and they give so much of everything, and then what are they left with at the end? What's the transition like? starting to dig into it and talk to people, there's different levels of success. Some guys have found the transition really easy. They had a backup plan. Life was easy. Other guys kind of fell off that wall. They didn't really have a plan in place. I think there's a huge statistic. I think 70% of guys finish their career either not on their own terms, so injury
Yeah.
or non-selection. So most people are blindsided to when it's going to finish. There's a thing called athlete identity crisis, where if so much of your self-worth is tied to your sport, if you kind of draw, if you love the attention and your identity
Yeah.
is with rugby or whatever sport, and then that suddenly finishes,
Yeah.
that's the source of your self-worth and your identity. So there's a lot of mental health issues that go with it as well. Guys really struggle with maybe not having the attention or not having the, what it's like with rugby. Your days mapped out, your weeks, your months, your years. Everything's kind of set in stone. Turn up at this day, bring this. This is your gear. This is what you're doing. And then if that's taken away, some guys really struggle with, well, what do I do now? Like, this has been my whole life since I was at school to 20s, 30s, some people 40. If that's taken away, guys deal with that in different ways. So we wanted to create an agency that was had a holistic management approach to it. We wanted to not only, contracts was a really small part of it. Yeah, that's bread and butter, but we really try and find purpose in our athletes, and what do we want you to, what do you want to do with your life? Like, this is such a small window. Use it as a launching pad. I mean, it's in a name. We are Tenzing. It's the Sherpa to Seb and Hillary.
Yeah.
If you look at Ed Hillary's history, him climbing the mountain was a great achievement, but he actually used that as a platform to launch. You ask him or any people in Nepal, and it's what he did after that.
Yeah.
That's his legacy. It was that opening schools and the welfare and everything he gave back to the people. So for us, we use that analogy. It's like, use your sport as your Everest, and then that's your launch pad. That'll give you the platform, and use that to launch into whatever you're passionate about. Find your purpose in life, and go from there. So it's been a great journey. We've got a really special group of athletes who are doing some great things in the world, and it's really quite proud to be a part of it. And for me, like, passing on some of that, some of the mentor roles to some of the young guys, and I guess giving them things that, if I look back on my career and said what would have been ideal for me, things that I felt were missing, it's kind of, I'm trying to give them the tools that they can use to be better off.
Yeah, no, that's cool, because that was a big part of me doing this podcast, because I find that as rugby players, we have this amazing array of skills that we develop over our careers, but it was quite it is scary. Like, once it's over, I've done this since I was 17. Well, not podcasting, but I've played rugby professionally since I was 17 years old. I was still in my last year of high school when I debuted for Waikato. So that's all I've ever done. And to be successful at rugby, like, for me, it didn't come naturally. So it was a lot of time put in. I didn't have time for anything else when I was trying to make it. I was lucky I had a supportive family that helped support me through that early part when I wasn't earning that much. I could stay at home. I could, I didn't have to worry too much about bills or food and that sort of thing. So I could actually really put a lot of time into developing myself and my craft and my game.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a trade behind me. I didn't go to university because I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to play professional rugby, and it took up so much time to get there, to get to that point, to do that. But you learn some amazing skills through the journey. But it's like, how I can't walk into a job interview and hand over a degree. Like, it's like, here's my degree in professional rugby.
PhD in rugby.
Yeah. And I'll be like, oh, what? Well, yeah, I'm Dr. Sweeney now because I've played rugby for this long. Like, you can't, it doesn't translate onto paper. So the reason for doing this is I wanted to show people that there is more to us as professional athletes, as rugby players. And there's a vast array of skills that get developed over time.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. It's that's what I've found as an athlete now, transitioning into the corporate world, is there's so many things that we take for granted that normal people see as special. Things like leadership and team culture and overcoming adversity and kind of discipline and all these kind of things. And you think as a rugby player, like, well, I've learned nothing. How am I going to get a job? And then you go into these corporate environments and you see them sitting there and they're talking about team building or these kind of things that we were doing 15 years ago, and, and they're so pumped about it, and they're like, oh my god, this is amazing, this is going to change our corporate structure, we're going to be the best company in the world. It's like, man, you guys are like, we were doing that 15 years ago, like, and I guess it's giving people the confidence to understand those skills and to see the value in them, and to I guess is to be able to to pass them on and to coach and be a leader or a public speaker or whatever it is that floats your boat. It's us as a company, we are trying to firstly identify what it is and then put a plan in place.
Yeah.
Give you the skills and confidence to execute what you're trying to do.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's so cool because talking about that corporate world, a good friend of mine, Adam Burns, he's a lawyer. Oh, sorry, not a lawyer. He's an accountant, and he was saying that he's so grateful for his learnings from rugby because he works in a high pressure big company at Deloitte's, and he said like he sees people cry every day because they've never been told you're not good enough or that's not good enough.
Yeah.
But he's like he writes up a report and he said it's terrible, and they tell me it's terrible. It's like, okay, sweet. Like I've heard that before. Like okay, what do I need to do to fix it? But it's just because, and he's so grateful for that experience of professional rugby and being put in the spotlight and being told like, no, you need to improve here. This needs to be better. That a lot of people don't have to go through that, and they do. They go through university and they pass, and that's a success. That's all success.
Yeah, there's no setbacks.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you get into the real world and in a high pressure situation of a job, and then that's when the setback comes, and it's like being able to deal with that, and people do deal with that. But I suppose rugby fast tracks that because it's day to day, every day that you're going through those learnings. Cool. So you'll move to Hamilton.
Yes.
The Tron.
I never thought I'd ever end up in Hamilton.
Do you want to talk about what you said earlier about as a place to visit?
Yeah, I'll be the first time. I used to rubbish Hamilton. I used to, as someone who doesn't live here, used to be like, oh, mate, playing Waikato or we're playing the Chiefs. Like, damn, who wants to go to Hamilton? Because you obviously fly here. It's probably at least 2 flights if you're coming from Dunedin or Christchurch, and then get here, stay in a budget motel, and you see the ground, and maybe go out for a couple of beers, and you're on the plane the next day, and you go. So it gets a really bad rap. So, when I got the opportunity to come and join the Chiefs start of this year,
were you dreading it?
I was super excited about the Chiefs, and I was like, not that pumped on Hamilton.
Yeah.
But after being here, I love the place actually. Like it's the city's got everything you need. The central location, 20 to 30 minutes to Raglan, and been to Coromandel a couple of times, and back to the Mount. But spending most of my life in the South Island, I think this is probably the area of the country I've seen the least of. So I've lived in Auckland for a time, and my partner's from the Kapiti Coast. But this is my first real experience of the Waikato. So I've been loving it, and being in the Chiefs too. Like I'm a white boy from the South Island, going to Christchurch Boys High. Not a huge exposure to the Māori culture.
Yeah.
And for me, coming into the Chiefs and to learning about the Māori connections that they have, and how they draw on the mana from all around the region, and all those the facets that go into that team and that culture. As an outsider, getting to experience that and learn it and be a part of that this year was really, really special for me. I'll treasure that. As a Highlander or as a player that there's not a Chief, and you hear Chief's mana, it's kind of, it doesn't mean
it's
anything.
Like a throwaway comment,
it's a throwaway line.
Yeah.
And for me, it was the same thing. It was like, it's Chief's mana, whatever. We had our own thing going on, but for me to come in this year and to learn what it meant, and to buy in, and to be a part of it was really special. It's incredible. I think it's a really unique culture and experience. I don't think there's many teams around the world that have that Māori connection like the Chiefs.
Yeah. Well, I was in the team when Chiefs mana actually first came I suppose like a focal point and something that we spoke about back in maybe 2009 might have been, and Sione Lauaki was actually the first one that sort of said it. And I remember we were doing a team culture, team building sort of thing, and you come up with a vision, or you do the same thing pretty much every year, and we were really struggling to think of I suppose like a catchphrase or a word for what we were sort of doing. And at the time, I'd spent a couple of years in the New Zealand Māoris environment and learnt about the word mana, and it was brought up, and yeah, we had a few white boys from Christchurch and a few island boys from Auckland, and the Chiefs has always been really diverse in cultures.
Yeah.
But the thing that really stood out for me with, like, when you talk about the word mana, is it means something different to everybody, and that's okay. So and I think in a rugby environment, it's perfect for that reason, because the game's so diverse, the people that play it are so diverse, that it's okay for it to mean something different to you than it does to me. And
it has to.
Yeah.
But that's how it was explained to me this year. Even though I'm not Māori and there's a lot of Pacific Islanders and non-Māoris in the team, the mana and the Chiefs, and you bring from wherever you come from, you bring your mana, and you're adding it to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
You put it on the waka.
Yeah.
And it's, and everyone. Yeah, it's not just a Māori thing. It was, that's where the roots were.
Yep.
But it was just so diverse and accepting of everyone, and that's what made it so strong. I think was that we're all on the waka together. We're all got to be paddling in the same direction. So it made it really strong.
Yeah, and it's good. It's talking to, I've got a lot of friends still involved in the team, and like it wasn't successful in terms of results, but you can just still see that there is that mana there. There's that respect for each other, and the games were so close. Like it could have gone either way, but it didn't. You didn't see it deteriorize the team culture.
Yeah, and that's something that really surprised me actually, because I've been involved in a lot of teams that haven't been that successful, and they tear apart.
Yep.
And then there's bitching and moaning and finger pointing, and by the end of the season, it's a shambles.
Yeah, it's quite toxic.
Yeah, it's toxic. Everyone's complaining. Little things kind of annoy everyone, and the coach needs to go, and this trainer needs to go, and I hate this guy, and I hate this guy, and blah, blah, And
I've been in those rooms.
Everything every little thing is a major.
Yeah.
But with the Chiefs, like we lost every game of the comp. You mentioned it was so close, but they just stayed so tight. But they still really believed in what they were doing. Like everyone. There was no bitching or moaning. Like I never heard a bad word kind of said about anything like that. Everyone was still on the same waka. Everyone's still bought into what we're doing, and they were giving 100%, even though they were falling over week after week.
Yeah.
They were still giving 100%, and they were still doing it for each other. So, I thought that was incredibly strong. Yeah,
and we've spoken about a lot through this chat now in terms of success. Like you got to go through adversity. This team, this group, there's a lot of young players in there, and they've had a good taste of adversity early. They've stuck strong together. So like I said it on Anton's podcast, I'm real excited to see what's going to come from this, because I know the coaches, and I have a lot of trust in the coaches that are involved there. They played a huge part of my career, and I have a lot of respect for them. So I'm pretty confident that things are going to turn around. I'm pretty excited to see the direction that it goes.
Yeah, I think so. Like I can see guys like Sam Kane and Anton and those leaders. They had a really good review process, and they took a lot of learnings out of this year. Young guys have obviously got that experience now.
Yep.
And then I can imagine their preseason next year. They'll be doing a lot of talking about how they can do things better, and it's probably set them up for a good learning, going through that adversity and learning how to lose.
Yeah,
I think. You learn more from a loss than you do from a win sometimes.
Yeah, always do.
They're in a good place.
Cool. All right. I think we'll wrap it up there. Tomo, any final words from you, mate? Anything you want to leave us with?
No, I think I've talked enough, man.
Yeah.
If you're still here at the end of this podcast, then
No, you must be really interested. There's some awesome topics there, and like you've had such a a long and diverse career and played everywhere. So I just want to thank you, for coming on and sharing some of that with us. And yeah, I think that it'll be received really well. I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, my pleasure, mate. I think it's quite nice to sit here and unpack some of that stuff sometimes, because I've been doing it for so long. You can forget about those moments. So it's quite nice to relive some of them again and actually remember. I think it's not till you finish and you can actually reflect on some of those moments, because there's some of those things will stick with you for the rest of your life. So it's quite nice to go down memory lane.
Yeah. No, that's good. It's like therapeutic.
Thank you for joining the journey with us.
Yeah.
Tune in next week.
No, cool. Thank you very much, Tomo.
No problem, mate.